Today we're going to be talking about 10 spirit fingers. Spirit fingers. Hi friends! Thank you so much for clicking to watch this video. If you're new here, my name is Sandy. Thank you so much for stopping by on my channel. And if you have already subscribed and joined the family, then thank you for doing that as well. At the end of this video, if you like it, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down there and give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to stay connected with me on Instagram. If you have any questions, I'm really responsive on there, or you can comment below and I'll be sure to get back to you. So let's get into the video. Today we're going to be talking about 10 items that you need as an interior design student. I battled with saying 10 like this, but it felt like spirit fingers. So we're just gonna say 10 instead of throwing my hands at you. I don't know what this is. So I really wanted to make this video because there were a lot of school supplies items that I needed when I started school that I just was not familiar with, that I'd never heard of, and I was like, why do I need a brush and tape, and what are all these special pencils? So I just think it's a really good heads up for anyone who's thinking about going to design school or has already been accepted. They're very pricey, just letting you know, okay? They are not cheap, especially when we start talking about markers, but they're necessary, and I just kind of want to explain what they all do, and hopefully that helps you in your future classes. So the first item you're going to need is a drafting brush. I'll try and find photos of everything and post them probably right here, but I'll do my best to explain. And if you guys have any questions about where you can find them, usually you can get them all on Amazon, or if you want specific ones that I use, comment and I'll link them if it's necessary. But you should be able to find them at your local art stores or Michael's and things like that. Drafting brush. So that is going to be a brush that you use to sweep away eraser shavings. And I know that sounds like, why can I just like use my hand? Why do I need a special brush to do that? So let's talk about drafting for a second and what that actually is. So drafting is when you're drawing floor plans. So you're looking like directly overhead at something and you're trying to draw a 2D drawing of something. And that, well, usually when you're doing that in class, it's going to be the first time you're doing it and it's really hard, but you're also going to be using graphite pencils, which I'll get into later, but you're not using like mechanical pencils, which you can, but I don't recommend them. I don't find them as, they're just not as, I feel, thick as a graphite pencil, but you're gonna be using pencils and not pens, never pens, because you want to be able to erase, and the kind of paper that you're going to be using picks up the oils from your hands. So if you're drawing with like this graphite pencil and then you smear your hand over it to brush off the eraser shavings, then that's going to smear your drawing and it's going to be awful, because I'm telling you, you would have spent hours drawing that. So every time you erase, you use a drafting brush to brush off the eraser shaving, so that you don't want to use your hands at all whatsoever, because it will mess up your drawing and then you'll be stuck erasing all the little smudges and it'll just never look the same. So that brings me into the second thing you're going to need, which is going to be graphite pencils and an eraser. So graphite pencils do not come with an eraser on the end like we're used to, like the number 2 pencils that we used in grade school. You don't want to use that eraser because it's too harsh for the kinds of paper you're going to be using, which I'll get into a little later. You're going to need like a separate eraser. You think about like the big fat pink erasers from school that were like shaped kind of like no, not a trapezoid. They were kind of shaped like a parallelogram on the side if you look at them. But you don't want that, because that also is too harsh. It's going to be a white eraser, and you'll want that in conjunction with your pencils, because the pencils do not come with erasers on the end. And at first it's kind of annoying, but then you just kind of get used to it. The eraser is what's best. It's like a cleaner eraser. It doesn't leave like a pink smudge on your paper, which you don't want. And then the graphite pencils come in what's called different line weights. So the weight of a line is like how thick the line is, and you're going to want something that's about 4 pencils or so as a starter, and there's like like B and 2B and HB and 4H and all these other things, the numbers on the pencils let you know how dark it's going to be and how, when you're drawing. Yeah, so the numbers are different darknesses. And then the line weight thing, you're going to want to use a lighter pencil for a lighter line, for a smaller line weight, and then a darker pencil for a darker line weight. For example, when you're drafting, at the end of, well, this is just how my teacher taught it, but at the end of drawing your whole floor plan, you go in and you darken all the exterior walls, and it really makes the drawing pop. But you want to do the exterior walls, darkening them is easier with like a B pencil because it's darker, so you don't have to press down as hard to try and get like a thick or fatter line, a heavier line. So all these things sound like super minute, but they're very important when you're actually drafting. And there's also, most of the supplies that I'm going to be listing are for like first and second year students. Once you hit your junior and senior year, you're not really hand drawing as much and you're doing a lot of computer stuff. So again, these are really for the early on students. So the third thing you're going to need is blue tape or drafting dots. I prefer blue Scotch tape that you use to line the walls when you're painting your house because I just think it works better than drafting dots. But basically a drafting dot is just like literally a little tiny circle of tape. And when you lay your paper down on a drafting table, I'll try and insert a picture of a drafting table so you guys can see. You're laying it down and you basically tape your paper down on all four ends, because the drafting table has like this long bar that you move up and down. And if you continue to move up and down and you haven't secured your paper, then your paper is going to move. And if your paper moves, then your lines aren't straight. So it's really, really important to have straight lines, because when you're measuring things, if the lines aren't straight, your measurements will be off. So the drafting dots are put there at the end, so at the end of each corner, so that you can slide it up and down without moving that. I find personally that the drafting dots lift up because they're so small. It's a small surface area. So I like blue tape, and I will take like a larger piece of blue tape and put that down. Also, blue tape is cheaper than drafting dots, I think, and it lasts a lot longer because it's just like one giant roll instead of all these individual little dots on an adhesive. So get blue tape, I recommend, instead of drafting dots, but I'll put a picture of both so that you guys can see. So the next thing you're going to need is the most important thing on this list. It's called a scale, and not a scale that like weighs your body or the weight of food or something like that. A scale is a ruler. It's like a special ruler. It's kind of shaped like a triangle, and it has 3 different sides, and the 3 different sides have different measurements. So it's like a second of half an inch, a quarter inch, a 1/16 of an inch, a 32nd of an inch, a foot, and those are all different sides. Because what happens is when you draw floor plans, you draw them what's called to scale. So if something is 5 feet long, I can't draw 5 feet on a sheet of paper. So I would then use my ruler to draw something that's like, I don't know, a quarter of an inch, and then a quarter of an inch equals a foot. So then I would draw, and if I'm drawing 5 feet, then I would draw 5 quarter inches. And when you're done with your floor plan, you write what the scale measurement is. So every quarter inch on this drawing equals a foot, or every 1/8 an inch on this drawing equals 1 foot. And you need that to be able to build things accordingly in the real world. So you want to make sure that you don't get the wrong scale. There's also one for engineering students or engineers. You want to get the architecture one, because the engineering one measures things in like kilometers and miles. It measures like distance, not the small tiny distances like feet and inches that we need for interior designers. Next thing you're going to need is triangles. Not like the sound triangle, not the instrument, but triangles, a 45-90 triangle, and then a 30-90-60 triangle. And those help you, one, draw corners for your buildings, because we draw a lot of corners, a lot of lines that come perpendicular to each other. But also when you're using the drafting table, like I talked about, that has like that bar that slides up and down on your paper, you put the triangle on top of the bar and you slide up and down so you can draw straight lines. You don't want to draw those lines with your scale, with your ruler, because the ruler only has one side. So it'll tilt around when you're trying to draw straight lines, whereas the triangle has two sides, so it'll stay in the same place all the time when you're drawing. And the triangles are just super helpful. You don't just use them for drafting, but you use them for drawing perspective and making sure things line up to each other. You'll want definitely both of them and not just one, because the 30, 60, 90 is taller and longer and helps you draw more continuous lines, as opposed to stopping and having to slide up and draw and slide up and draw, that kind of thing. So you definitely want those as well. So you're also going to want trash paper, not like garbage can. Trash doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to throw it away, but it can be easily thrown away. It's kind of like tracing paper. Technically they're different, but for the purposes of this video, trash and tracing paper are like the same thing. So we'll just say tracing paper because it's harder to find trash paper when you're searching online. Just tracing would be fine. And what's really great about that is you can take the tracing paper and you put it on top of things so that you can see through it, because it's really thin and it's meant for you to be able to see through it so that you can trace things. So you'll put it on top of your floor plan and you can draw, for example, if you have a space, a living room, and you don't know how you want to lay out the furniture, you put the tracing paper on top and then you will draw little shapes for your furniture without having to actually draw them on your real floor plan and erase again and again and again, because the paper will look really ugly. And you also don't know what kind of plan you want for your furniture. Do you want the sofa to be over here? Do you want the fireplace to be over here? Do you want the chairs over here? And you're able to take different sheets of tracing paper and just draw it again and again until you get it right. And that way you're not compromising the original drawing. You're also going to want vellum. I had never heard of vellum ever in my life. Vellum is a particular kind of paper, and it's closer to tracing paper, except it's thicker. It's not as see-through because it's not really meant to see through it or to be tracing like tracing paper is. It has a weird kind of matte finish a little bit, but that's what you're going to be used primarily in your drafting class to draw floor plans on. It picks up the graphite like really well, as opposed to just regular paper that's in your notebook. And they sell it in like these really large rolls, or they sell it in sheets that are like 11 by 17 or 18 by 24, or just giant sheets if you need it. So that's something that you're gonna need to pick up. It is a little pricier on the side of papers, but I don't think it's too bad. You're definitely gonna want to have a ton of it for your drafting class. And this, markers, you guys. Let's talk markers. I didn't know they made $300 markers. I didn't know that. And I was hit with it in class, like, what? Oh my god, what does this marker pay my bills? Does it do my taxes? Like, what? Why do I need to spend $300 on markers? Like, this is insane. Is it gonna grease my scalp? Like, I don't know why I need $300 markers. That's what I thought, but you kind of want them. So here's the thing with the markers. You're going to be doing a lot of drawing. And one of the classes that I take is called it's called perspective drawing, where that's just line drawing, so you're using all your different line weights for your pencils. Then you learn how to add color to those line drawings and how to make it look realistic, how to render something stainless steel, how to make the wood grains, how to get the lamps to look like they're lit up in your picture. And you need these kinds of markers because these markers are meant for illustrators. They're not like Crayola. Our teacher actually specifically told us, don't get Crayola, and that wouldn't cut it. And he's like, F. If you come in here with Crayola, I'm automatically giving you an F. I think he was kidding. I think, maybe. But you don't want to go cheap on your markers, because it's just not going to be the same quality, and the color isn't going to move on the page. So what I mean by that is, if you think of watercolor, and people take the little brush and then they dab it in the little paint in the water, and then the color just kind of moves all around the page, you're kind of doing the exact same thing, but with the markers. And it's not as watery, of course, and it dries a lot faster, but when you're able to move the colors on the page, it really helps you get these gradual things, and you can make shadows and just help things look more cohesive in your drawing, without too much work, without you having to put in too much elbow grease into like trying to make sure everything like fits together or blends together. And you don't have to get the $300 ones. When I say you don't want to go cheap on them, I just mean don't get like Crayola pencils. But for instance, there are some called like Masters markers. I'll try and insert a picture if I can find it on Amazon. And those I think were like 80 bucks. And he said, okay, that's fine if you can't afford them. The professor was understanding to people who weren't in a financial situation where they couldn't get $100 color pencils and $100 markers. So you also need color pencils. The ones that are like the top notch are called Prismacolor, and they make them in so many different colors, so many different tones. There's like one that's specifically just a bunch of grays. There's one that's specifically a bunch of greens. For example, if you are an industrial designer and you design cars, you're probably gonna want a lot of grays. If you do landscape design, you're probably gonna want a lot of greens. If you're someone who draws those kinds of things, especially if you're drawing the exterior of a house or even if you're drawing a car in the driveway of a house, those are really helpful colors to have. But don't get the specific like green and gray or the skin tone markers just until you know that, oh, drawing is my niche, I really like this. Just get the basic set. And again, like I said, it doesn't have to be Prismacolor, those are the most expensive ones, but there are some that are comparable, and just do your research and read reviews, and you'll be able to read stuff from other drawing students or people who draw for a living and see how those are working out for people. So you're also going to need an X-Acto knife. I believe X-Acto is just the brand. I think they make other ones, but we just call it an X-Acto knife, and this thing is so sharp. Like if you take a brand new one and you just drop it on the ground, I've seen them like stand straight up. And it's pretty heavy, like the handle is heavy in comparison to the blade, but they're so sharp, you will cut yourself, you'll get cut, okay? So be careful. And you're gonna want a lot of extra blades because the blade is changeable. There are teachers who are so strict as to say, every time you make 20 cuts, change your blade, which I think is a little expensive and a little much. But if you once you start cutting a lot, your blade is gonna get dull. So and there really is no way to sharpen it, so they just come with like blade refills, and you want to refill your blade. I think some schools come with. My school had an art kit that they gave you, and if your school doesn't, then you might want to just get like a different one, or even if you do have one that comes with your kit, with an art kit or whatever supplies kit your school gives you or is selling, because I think they didn't give it to us, it was part of our tuition. And they'll have like comfier handles, some of them, because you'll be holding it a lot, and you have to be taught how to correctly cut with an X-Acto knife. You don't want to cut like on surfaces that you need to preserve, because it will cut through the paper and it will make a sharp line on your table, on your bed, on your like whatever it is that you're cutting on. They're very, very sharp. And what you're going to be cutting is a lot of foam board. That is another thing you need. So foam board, literally just think of like stuff you get from the dollar store, foam board that kids use for science fair projects. The dollar store ones, super cheap, they're $1, or ones from Walmart are like $2 or $3. The more expensive ones are about, I think it's about 20 inches by 30 inches, and they're about $5, 4 to 5, and they're thicker, and then they just hold things better. For example, when I say that, I mean you're going to be putting other pieces of foam board onto your mood board. If you're making a mood board, or if you're doing a presentation board, probably it's what you use that for more. For example, I had a lighting class that I took where we had to design a lighting fixture, draw a lighting fixture in the space. Then we had to talk about all the lights that we would use in this office, what they were going to be used for, and we had like 4 different boards. And each board had pictures glued onto it, and then and if I was specifying, for instance, a fabric for that space or something, then I would take a little tiny piece of foam board, wrap it in fabric, and then adhere that to the board again. So it gets kind of heavy because you're putting other pieces of board onto it. And a flimsier board like from the dollar store might warp, and the edges might get kind of frayed if you toss it in and out of your car, if you're moving it from classroom to classroom. So if you just really need something super quick and it's not like your final presentation, or if you're in a financial situation that you just can't afford these $5 boards, then just get the cheaper ones. It's not a big deal. They're not gonna get knocks off your grade, but it does, they don't warp as much. So if you leave something in your car and it's really cold, or if your car's really hot, the thicker boards won't warp as much as the cheaper boards will. So you're definitely gonna need that, like I said, the X-Acto knife to cut those boards because some of them like are really thick and you really have to like press down super hard onto the X-Acto knife. So to wrap it up, things you're going to need are drafting brush, blue tape, eraser, the pencils with the different letters like B and HB. You're going to need vellum and trash paper or tracing paper, a scale, the triangles, foam board, the X-Acto knife. Yeah, that's it. So if you found this video super helpful, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Side note, I only touched on 10 materials or so that you need, and there's so much more. If I talked about all of them, this video would be super long. I'm actually concerned that it's really long right now. I'll find out when I start editing. But if you want to see a part 2, then give us a thumbs up or comment, let me know. And if you found this helpful, I just hope, like I said again, you subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram if you want to stay connected or ask me any questions. I'm pretty responsive on there. And don't forget to put a ring on it, all right? You liked it, you stay till the end, hit that subscribe button. Bye.